Welcome, everybody, to Building Bridges, Discovering Your Path to Peace. Today is our very first episode, and I am completely privileged, honored, and pleased to have my very dear friend, DocChristine Sauer, as my first guest.
Hey, thank you, Maxine. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are recording in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Oops, right up there, Christine.
Beautiful place, although we have snow right now.
A lot of snow we had and cold. The coldest day was yesterday or the day before, Saturday maybe, right?
I'm grateful for snow. It brings us water. I'm grateful for the cold. It kills all those nasty bugs that I don't want to see in the summer.
Yeah.
That's why we don't have snakes and crocodiles.
Good point. I never thought it that way.
And those big biting spiders?
Oh, well, you know what? We had those in Bali in India. Plus snakes, etc.
I'm not a big fan of them. And it definitely impacts my inner peace.
Well, there we are. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Peace. Peace in the world, peace in the country, peace in our community, and peace within ourselves. And for those of you who don't know, Christine is from Germany. How could you guess with that accent?
Right? I have no idea. People still think I'm from Holland.
Wie geht's Ihnen?
Wie geht's Ihnen?
Yeah.
Danke.
Don't push me any further, though. Anyway, welcome, Liebling.
Yeah.
And Christine and I had been having a discussion about peace in post-war Germany, and all of the misconceptions that have existed for many, many years since then, that the world is totally, I believe, uninformed or misinformed regarding the German people and their lifestyle. So, Christine, I wanted you to discuss about what it was like for your parents who were truly post-war Germans, and then when you came along, how it still impacted in 1961 when you were born.
Absolutely. 1961 was the year the wall was built. And
the Berlin Wall.
Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Not just Berlin, but all through Eastern Germany, which then was the Russian zone, to the other three zones.
And I want to ask you, were you from Eastern, or are you from Eastern Germany?
No, I'm from Western Germany.
Okay.
I was one of the fortunate ones born in Western Germany. My parents also lived in Western Germany, although my grandmother is from Meissen, which was then Eastern Germany.
Right.
And now we are all united again.
I see.
What people don't know is that my mother, she's born in 1930. So she was 9 years old when the war came along.
Yeah.
And war is really the ultimate outward thing of not peace. It's really the opposite. Antithesis. I like that word. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes. You say it nicely.
Gee, thanks.
And war is the opposite of peace, because there's no peace. No peace outwardly. And my mother told me she lived in Berlin. Berlin was heavily bombed by the Allies, starting in the 40s. So every time there was an alarm, and there were many, they went in the basement of their home and had to wait for the bombs to fall.
Yeah.
And they could hear the bombs approaching, this whirring sound, and then the impact. And the house was spared, but the neighbors weren't. And we look at picture of Haiti nowadays on TV after the earthquake, and post-war Germany looked pretty much like it. There was not much left. The targeted bombing that they have now, which is still bombing of people, wasn't available then. So the bombers just
It's
dropped the
widespread.
bombs. It was as widespread
Yeah.
as possible. And the children were, I think in 1940 some, removed to the countryside where the chance of getting impacted by bombing was low.
Yeah, I see.
So they were separated from the parents and put in camps in the countryside.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so without their family, without the surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
they were encamped.
They were in camps and
Wow.
children, and at that point I think they weren't too much mourning. And I must say, during the Hitler era, when my mother grew up and my father was born in 25, so when the war broke out, he was 14 and too young to serve. At 16, he was drafted, and he was deemed to be a good candidate for a bomber pilot. So he was trained to be a pilot. And he was very fortunate because the moment that he was supposed to go to the front of the war in Russia, he got diphtheria and had to stay home.
Really?
And it took him, I think, 3 months to get over it.
Wow.
And after that, something else happened, and then the war was over.
I see. I see.
But my grandfather, who obviously was an adult when the war started,
Right.
and he and his 7 brothers all had to serve Hitler, whether they wanted or not. Most of them didn't want it.
Is that right? So they didn't really want to. There was a resistance
Yes.
within the people to Hitler.
Yes.
But of course they had to
They
comply.
were scared because they knew that anybody who resisted would be lined up by the SS and put in a concentration camp, German or not.
And were Germans, some of them, put into
Absolutely.
concentration
People
camps like
who didn't like Hitler,
yeah,
dissidents,
yes,
pastors that were continuing to preach against him, gypsies, they all landed in concentration camps, which was an awful place. But as a German, at least if I believe my mother, she was told by the parents, oh, the Jews are going to a labor camp, that they will be learning how to garden and dig soil and plant carrots and potatoes. And Jews worldwide at this era, they're not really liked well, because I'm not sure why exactly. Really, there's no reason for it. There's good Jews, bad Jews, good Christians, bad Christians.
Absolutely.
But at that point, there was a lot of racism against Jews.
Yeah, of course.
And Hitler
He used that to his advantage to get the control of the people. And there was a science, the fear.
And there was also a science that is now mostly forgotten that was called phrenology, where they analyze the skull to get hints for your character. Now, later we realized it doesn't make any sense, but so Hitler justified his hate of the Jews by their skull characters, the shape of their nose, and they were ugly caricature, which overdid it. And so the people were basically told what to think. And
Christine, forgive me, but doesn't this sound vaguely or completely familiar when we think about the Brown Menace today?
Absolutely.
Scary stuff.
Absolutely. And there's even politicians that use propaganda to their benefit.
Of course.
I won't name any names. But
absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
Propaganda then was new. TV was new.
Yeah.
There was really no real TV. It was all the movies. So people went once a week to the Wochenschau, and in school we watched them, where they got pictures of the war and what was going on in very rosy terms. A German victory was celebrated.
Yes.
German loss was not even mentioned.
Right.
So that's propaganda. And then Goebbels, Hitler's right hand, he was an excellent speaker. And Hitler himself, when you look at him,
he was quite an orator.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he himself was dark-haired, and dark-skinned, really.
Yes.
And he said the typical German is an Aryan
Sure.
with blonde
Fair.
hair, blue
Mhm.
eyes.
Mhm.
So he wasn't himself an Aryan at all. But he thought he was a leader, and he actually was elected by the people in 1932 in a free election.
Mhm.
And then a few years later, he declared exceptional status and made himself a dictator. And at first people liked it because he promised them work
Yeah.
and he promised them food, and he delivered on both. They had work because they were building the autobahns, and they were building, finally, they were building weaponry again, which Germany, after the First World War, which was very traumatic, because
Yeah.
the First World War was before the movie area,
Mhm.
and people
Mhm.
didn't know what war was.
Sure.
They were excited going to war.
Sure.
And then they got the reality of the chemical warfare in the Normandy. I have been there. I have seen the long lineup of graves. What a terrible slaughter field that was on both sides.
Yeah.
And yes, Germany lost the war, but Germans suffered just as much, if not more, than the others. And yes, the Russians suffered a total lot, because in war brings out the
There are
worst
no
in people.
winners. There
are
are
no
no
winners.
winners in war. No.
War brings out the worst in people.
Yeah.
And what many people also don't know is that Hitler was the first to have rockets in Weenemünde.
Really?
Werner von Braun,
Yes.
was a German, and he made rockets for Hitler. And he used the rockets to shoot them towards England. And then Werner von Braun managed to go to the States and develop the atomic bomb. So had Hitler not thrown him out, basically because he was a Jew,
Yes.
Hitler had the atom bomb. It was close. And
Amazing,
the
isn't it?
fate, how fate works, is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad, obviously, that Hitler lost, because he had nothing good at heart.
Mhm.
But war was awful. And my mother told me when the war ended in 1945, war was not over for the Germans. She was in Berlin when the Russians came and marched into Berlin. It was not freedom. It was torture, because they went through every house and ate all the food, destroyed what they could, and raped the women.
Really?
Because they were mad at what the German soldiers had done in Russia. They had done the
Sure.
same.
Sure.
But
It
that was after the retaliation.
Yes.
That was after the war. And I remember my mother telling me how she and her twin sister, both 15, pretty young women, were hiding between a big cupboard and a secret compartment in the basement for 3 days while the Russians were in the house,
Oh my God.
raping her mother, beating her father, but gratefully not finding the girls.
Wow.
So they got spared.
Incredible.
And then post-war in Berlin, there was the Berlin blockage, where the Russians tried to get West Berlin into the Russian zone. And the Americans recognized what was going on. And that really began the rehabilitation of Germany, because they said, oh my God, Russia is really trying to antagonize us. At that point, Russia was an aggressive force.
Yes.
And they tried to get as much of Germany as they could. So that's why, I don't know which president did the Luftbrücke, the airplanes that delivered packages to West Berlin, so they had to eat because they were hungry. They ate spinach made out of stinging nettle. They went into the potato fields after they were harvested and seen if there's a potato or two left that they could eat. They were hungry. They had nothing to eat. The only nutrition came from the parcels from the Americans.
Is that right? Wow.
So to
and
this
was this
day,
just after the war?
that was after the war, from 45 to
So
47.
that would have been FDR, probably. That was FDR. I
Probably,
think,
yeah,
at that time.
You know your US history better. It's the same in Europe. We learn US history and Canadian history, but not as detailed as
of course
we do
not.
here.
I know.
And on the other hand, in Canada, I think we have 1 year of European history in school. That's what my son had here in Halifax. And you don't learn much in that. And I think in America they have none. They don't know even that Europe exists sometimes.
Yeah.
But and I remember, so my mother could sing all the Hitler songs. She liked the melodies. And I asked her, because I heard the lyrics, and I said to her, that's really good lyrics. And she said, well, as a 9-year-old, I
just
didn't
sing
think
the melody. You just sing,
it's just
right?
a melody. I didn't think about the lyrics. I didn't think about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and
Sing,
my father.
Sing one. Go ahead. But
Die Fahne hoch, die Reihen festgeschlossen, es marschiert in ruhig festem Tritt.
You can see how a child would go along with that.
Yes.
And what does it mean?
It's
What
a marching rite. That means raise the flag and close the rows, because the SA, the special army of Hitler, it's marching with calm and steady tread.
I see.
So you can see the soldiers marching.
Yeah.
And of course, the kids were marching.
The goose step, yeah?
Yeah. So that's where it started, and then it started that they were killing the Russians.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
They had words for that.
So you were born in 1961, which was the year the Berlin Wall went up, right?
I don't remember it myself, obviously.
You've seen it, but not so much.
I've seen it on TV, but that was the era of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And as children, when we went to school, we learned German history. We learned about Hitler.
Yes.
We watched videos of the concentration camps, what they did to those poor Jews, and how they looked when they came out. We saw those
they were
skeletons.
showing you this in school?
In school, about in grade 7, 8, 9. And we were told, as Germans, it's our fault that the Jews had to suffer so bad.
Wow.
So it's a collective German fault. And of course, Germany had to pay reparations. I think we still pay reparations.
I don't know.
But
here
I'm
you are,
Canadian,
a child in school, and you're feeling all of this guilt that you did this to this people.
Yes.
And what terrible mind-washing garbage is this?
We also, here in Canada, you hear, oh, Canada quite often.
I see.
The German national anthem at my growing up time was sung only at the Olympic Games when Germany won a gold medal.
I see.
Maybe at midnight when the TV program shut off, but I wasn't up then.
Yeah.
But the only time I really heard it was at the Olympic Games.
I see.
I think we learned it in school, but we never sang it. And here in school, they sing it sometimes every day.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because we are proud of Canada. We were ashamed to be Germans. And many of Germans are still ashamed, but the nationalism is coming back, whether that's a good thing or not. To a certain degree it is.
Why do you think that is? Is it now because of the people were so repressed and made to feel guilty for so long that it's just a natural reaction to that? The pendulum swinging the other way, you think?
I think too that the children that, like my children, they are now in their 30s. They say, what do I have to do with that? And the people that lived during the Hitler era are often dead. I mean, my mother is still alive, God love her, she'll be 90, she remembers a lot.
Yes.
But even she was a child during the Hitler era.
Yeah, right.
The adults during the Hitler era are gone. And Germany lost a lot of people. My grandfather's family, my grandfather came back, 7 of his brothers died in the war. So of 8 children, 7 passed away. And I know that in the US and Canada, we really had never bombs flying over us. And
No.
we never had to duck in the basement and darken the windows because the bombers are coming. So we really don't know how it is. And I don't think we really had to hunger.
Had to what?
To go hungry without food.
Well, you know what? Where they did? In Britain.
In Britain.
In Britain they did. My mother was British.
Yes.
And she told me they would
Britain
go
was
into
impacted
down into the air shelters. She was just a young woman, 21 at that time.
Yeah.
And she said that's where she learned how to smoke.
Yeah.
And that's what killed her ultimately, by the way. But the bombs, she lived in the Isle of Wight. Yeah. And so when the German Luftwaffe were flying back to Germany, the excess bombs they had, they drop on the Isle of Wight, on their way home. Yeah. So it was pretty horrific times, and of course they had food rationing and everything.
Yeah. So,
but then the Allies were allowed to feel proud of going to war and defending the faith and defending right and all of that, where it wasn't like that for the Germans.
No.
And yet, there were a lot of good German people who were manipulated by this madman.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I tend to believe my mother that even her parents didn't really know what happened to the Jews because it was a well-kept secret. And I know that the Allies knew in 1943 exactly what happened in the concentration camps.
Sure.
And some people say they could have done something earlier. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. It wasn't right regardless.
War is never right. And those people in Russia were the German soldiers. And it's horrifying. Put a whole village in a church, including women and children, and burned it up alive. I mean, that is horrific. And they burned the fields so they didn't have anything to eat. The Russians suffered heavy in the war through German hand. Yeah. Because I know that some people that had to be soldiers, they really didn't want to be soldiers.
Of course not.
It still brought the worst out in them because they were expected to be mean. They were expected to be brutal.
And it was survival, wasn't it?
It was survival.
Because if they didn't do it, it was going to be done to them.
Yeah, and there were very few people that dared to hide a Jew. Because if you were found out, you were killed. Yeah. You were put against the wall and shot. That was their favorite method of killing people. Yeah. Put 20 people in a row against the wall and then have a shooting commando of 22 or so guns. And every gun except for one had a bullet in it. So the shooting commandos could always say to themselves, I didn't do it. Yeah. They weren't sure. Was it them or the others?
Killed that person.
That killed those children and women in concentration camps that were killed that way when the gas ran out.
Oh my.
It was terrible. And then later, when I was about 14, 15, I read books about, because of course I was wanting to be a doctor, I read books about what experiments they did with those concentration camp prisoners, medical experiments. Yeah. And I'm still getting goosebumps.
So Mengele was there.
Mengele was one of them.
Yes.
But there were others. And what they did to those poor people, I can't imagine. Were those human beings? How would their inside look? I think that went far beyond what fear would make a person do. Far beyond.
It was psychotic.
I don't know. It was a sadist. It's some kind of a disorder. It's not an excuse. It's a miserable person that would expose people naked to the cold until they pass away, or put them in a cold bath until they pass away, measure all their life functions and temperature. They still use those data today.
Do they really?
For people, how people survive the cold. Wow. And there were much more brutal experiments than that.
So then in 1989, when Ronald Reagan came into presidency,
then I already was 28, and I remember today we lived in Braunschweig, which is about 2 hours from the border to Eastern Germany, and 2 hours to Berlin. 3 hours. You have to go through a little bit of the DDR.
Yeah.
And we watched it on TV live. The demonstrations that were not shot.
Yes.
Because before, people that tried to get across the wall were shot.
Yes.
And finally they weren't shot, and then the people became bolder. And you could see them just pushing the guards away.
I remember that video or the movie
I
or
saw
whatever.
it live on TV.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guards pushed the people, people pushed the guards away and just went across. And then they opened it and they came through with their little cars, their Trabis, Trabant, a miserable car, worst ever. But it cost a whole year's salary over there.
Yeah.
It was a very expensive
Wow.
car. So they came, and about 2-3 hours later, they arrived in Braunschweig.
Wow.
And we saw it on local TV. We lived about half hour from Braunschweig on the country.
I see.
We saw how they all came and went to the grocery stores and
Wow.
raided them.
Wow.
For weeks we couldn't buy, because we decided, the West Germans decided, as soon as the war was open, that we would take their money one-to-one.
Yeah.
Really,
It was because Reagan said, I remember
no,
this.
in the good.
Yeah. What he said was, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, and that was the demise of the Berlin Wall at that
was
time
the
in
beginning.
1989.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I still see the people climbing on the wall and celebrating, and then starting to tear it down with jackhammers and hammers and chisels. But the Trabis came for weeks to West Germany, especially where we were closest. And we took, West Germany took Eastern German money in 1-to-1, and the real relationship was more 20-to-1 or so.
I see.
But we said we accepted, so they could buy. And they bought bananas, they bought chocolate, they bought beer. Those were foods they couldn't properly get in the eastern part. They were not starving, they got cabbage and onions.
But it
and
was
all
all
that.
ration food.
No, it wasn't even ration.
No.
But there was just certain food they couldn't get. There was no imports. They didn't have any.
They were
foreign
isolated
cash.
from the outside world.
Yeah, they had what grew locally. They had potatoes, cabbage, onions, carrots, and stuff like that. So wheat, bread. They were not starving, but they didn't have those extras. And their chocolate tasted like cardboard. I was told.
Oh. Well, interestingly enough, so 1989, the Berlin Wall comes down. The physical wall came down.
Yes.
The psychological and emotional wall, I think, still exists even up to today. Does it?
Yeah, it was in the beginning. It was a general welcome. We all cried and hugged and went together.
Sure.
And then the West German government realized, oh my God, it cost us a lot of money. So they had to put up a separate tax, which they called solidarity tax.
I see.
So that's solidarity is positive. Tax is seen by most people as something they don't like.
You're right.
So I still pay the solidarity tax in Germany.
You do?
I still do.
And was that to help supposedly bring the country together? Is it like that?
It was to help bring the country together and help as East Germany rebuild.
To support them.
Because East Germany didn't look like East Berlin. East Germany in the rural parts looked like the last tanker just rolled out.
Really?
I've been there right after the wall opened. We went into the rural parts. They had cobblestone streets. The houses were old, and in Europe they have mostly brick houses, so they last for hundreds of years. And that's how old they were. The stores looked like in the 30s, and it was generally dilapidated. Piles of rubbish, of stones that nobody cleared away. It was depressing. So that was all fixed with the solidarity tax.
Well, that's interesting because you know what? I think I'm correct in saying that most people don't know or realize these events that took place and how it has extended even up until the modern day to this day, and lays the seeds for people to feel uncomfortable, uneasy, guilty, etc. All those negative feelings. Christine,
it makes it harder to love each other and to find inner peace.
So here's Here's my question to
Go
you.
for it.
In your humble opinion, and it's not always humble, I know.
I try to be.
I know, sweetheart. But what I'm saying is, in your opinion, what can be done in this world to bring that inner peace? Now, I know with your medical practice, you'll go into all of that regarding health issues. But certainly, peace is a health issue.
Peace, inner peace is a big health issue.
Yeah.
If you don't have inner peace, they call it anxiety. Now, they like to put what they call mental health, it's just a label, in a drawer, in drawers, like anxiety, PTSD, or whatever. And those are all labels, but they all have root causes. And I feel a big part of it is regaining your inner peace. And the way people can do it is, one, connect with what's above us. And I always compare it with a cell phone. That's my thing. The hardware, the cell phone itself, the battery is a body. The battery has to be charged. Can't be empty, or you can't watch your Netflix movie on your cell phone. But that's not enough. Even if the battery is charged, you have to have a system, a software system, Android or iOS, or you can't watch your Netflix movie. For us, it's emotion, mental feelings. But still, you can't watch your Netflix movie if you don't have something that you can't see, but you know it's there. We call it Wi-Fi for the smartphones. And for people, I believe that's our spiritual part. The spiritual part, whatever you believe it is, that is there. We can't see it, but
that's the hard wiring.
That's the hard wiring is our brain, like a radio. And the spiritual part is the radio waves. And the brain, our hardware, receives those waves and transforms them, depending on the wiring, the hardwiring, the software, into a nice movie, a love story,
a program,
a love story, or a horror movie. So it is the same radio waves that in one person come out as a terrible and in the other one is a symphony.
So the analogy just shows that we can program our mind, our bodies, and our spirit for peace.
Absolutely.
It's a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice, and we have to work to it. It's work to achieve inner peace.
It doesn't come easily.
We all get out of inner peace sometimes. We all get thrown out. When we have a sudden event happening, we get upset. Our peace is gone.
And you know what? That's what friends are for.
Yes. Friends. And if you don't have friends, I have a great blog, From Upset to Calm, and 5 easy steps.
And I love this lady. She's my bestest. And
I love you too.
We have so many things to discuss. This is our first episode of Building Bridges, Discovering Your Path to Peace. And we will have Christine on again. Certainly more than 1, 2, 3, 4 times, many more things to talk about.
Thanks, Maxine.
You're
the best.
Love you, Doc.
Love you too.
So thank you very much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed our episode today on peace and discovering a little bit more about what was Germany like from a German. So
now in Canadian thing. It's a nice country.
Yes. And she's very happy to be here in this wonderful country.
Yes.
And me too. I'm a Canadian.
So is my husband.
Yeah. And I'm a Brit also, by the way. I can't forget about my mom.
I'm still from Germany to say.
Yeah.
Germany is beautiful, but
of course.
I'm happy to live in Canada.
And me as well. I as well. So thank you, everybody. Please tune in for our upcoming episodes, and whatever it is you feel you would like to see us partake in and exhibit, please let us know. It's really, really important to me to know that. God bless. Namaste.